I don't know, Blake. I don't think I can trust you. We don't know who's a thing and who isn't. I will literally fight to the death for you. "20 years after the release of the 1982 horror classic The Thing, a licensed game was made based on it, and another 20 years later, it was remastered by Nightdive, which is the version I'll be playing for this video. Licensed games have come upon a bit of a renaissance the last few years with things like Hogwarts Legacy, Alien Isolation, or the Sony Spider-Man games, but in the early 2000s, a video game based on some property, mostly movies, was almost a guarantee to be terrible. Aragon, Catwoman, Star Wars Super Bombad Racing. Yeah, it really looked like that. Were all terrible games made to cash in on the popularity of the franchises they were based on. These games would typically be thrust on some small developer with a loose idea of the plot and maybe some concept art with nothing much to go on and an extremely short deadline to finish the game. But if they were so bad, why would The Thing get a remaster? And why did they make a game based on a movie that not only wasn't in theaters anymore, it was almost old enough to drink? The Thing, the movie, was an adaptation of the novella Who Goes There, which already had a film adaptation from 1951 called The Thing from Another World, but Universal owned it and they were shopping it around to different writers for a newer version in the late 70s because originality has long been dead in Hollywood. Well, look at that. This one's starting to get a little dust. Better get that remake going right away. They finally landed on John Carpenter to make the film, and while it was a box office bomb and generally disliked when it came out, it went on to become a horror classic, inspiring things like The X-Files, Stranger Things, Resident Evil, and perhaps most notably, Among Us is pretty much directly inspired by the concept. I won't spoil the whole film, but it revolves around an alien creature attacking researchers on a base in Antarctica that can take the form of any biological creature it comes into contact with and then absorbs, leading the researchers to lose trust in each other as they try to figure out who is a thing and defeat the monster once and for all, which can only truly be killed with fire. The movie doesn't resonate much with me personally, but if you like suspenseful horror at all, it's a must-see. So that was the movie, but what about the game? And why did I bring up so many bad licensed games? Well, Universal got back up to their old tricks again in the early 2000s, looking to use some of their old properties for video games this time, and similarly stumbled upon The Thing collecting dust once again, but now with the popularity it never had when it released. On top of that, the film has an ambiguous ending. So that got them thinking, what if we didn't do a retelling, but created a sequel instead as a video game? I cannot stress enough how improbable something like that happening was, and then to produce a good game and story out of it is an entirely different miracle. No one was doing anything like this with their licensed games, including Universal themselves, so I have no idea how this happened. They teamed up with Konami to publish for some reason, and then reached out to a small British developer called Computer Artworks, who you've probably never heard of because they have 2 total games to their name. Evolva, with an O, you pervs, and The Thing. Universal liked the squad-based mechanics that they had created in Evolva, and they were cheap bastards that didn't want to spend a ton of money on the development from a bigger company, so Computer Artworks created a third-person shooter, also called The Thing, yet it was a sequel to the movie that picks up shortly after it ends. Why they didn't give it any kind of tagline or something to tell you it was a sequel is beyond me, but they really didn't learn their lesson because in 2011, Universal released a prequel movie, and guess what they called it? Yeah, it's also called The Thing. Fuck it, why not? If you want the whole story now, you have to watch The Thing, 1982, then play the video game The Thing, 2002, and then you could cap it off by watching the prequel, The Thing, 2011. I already said this game was a third-person shooter with squad-based mechanics, and the story is actually pretty decent for what it is, but those things aren't enough to get your game remastered 20 years later by Nightdive. The Thing, the game, the sequel to the movie, is one of the most interesting shooters I've ever played, especially from the time, though it can feel only half-baked in some areas, but we'll get to that. You play as Captain Blake, the leader of Bravo Team, who was sent in to investigate what happened to U.S. Outpost 31, which is the rescue team referenced in the movie as coming to see what happened. While you search what remains of the base for any kind of clues or survivors, you interact with a squad. You can equip your squad with any weapons and ammo that you have on you, and they can follow you, stay in place, or get told to go to specific objectives. They also come in 3 types. Medics, which can heal anyone other than themselves, because medicine only works when someone else tells you to take it. Engineers, which can fix complex junction boxes throughout the outpost to restore power to doors and buttons. And soldiers, which have balls of steel and are hard to rattle, which is important because, playing off of the movie, everyone on this outpost is on edge and understands that anyone can be infected as a thing, even if they don't know it yet. To that end, in the original release, anyone besides you could get infected at any time, and there were scripted sections where a squad mate would turn into a thing that you would then have to deal with, though in the remaster these scripted events were removed. That was because you can also find test kits which test the blood of a squad mate or yourself to check for infection, and you can gain the trust of them by proving you aren't infected, or instantly cause them to turn if they are. The problem was, a squad mate could pass the test, then walk 2 feet, hit a scripted somebody must turn now spot, and instantly become a thing in front of you. Alright, you're clean. I told you I wasn't one of them. Now let's get out of here. That's pretty fucking dumb, so Nightdive changed it to be a chance of infection anytime they take a hit, and the blood tests will always give you a correct result, which is way better. You also gain the trust of people when you give them weapons or ammo or heal them, and you can calm them down if they're starting to go crazy from stress by administering an adrenaline shot. You just hype them up and they won't be able to tell how scared they are anymore. This is definitely a military strategy. They can also lose trust in you to the point that they'll start attacking you, but of course you can easily stop that problem with a stun gun, unless you forget about that mechanic and just shoot them instead. Oops. Enough about squads though. The main loop of this game involves shooting monsters, and that works a bit different than you might expect as well. The game auto-aims at any monster you point your crosshairs near, which makes it kind of dash all over the screen in combat. I can't find anything in particular to confirm, but I imagine this was done to help with the tone of the game, making combat frenetic and fights more difficult than if it was just point and shoot. The monsters also work just like they did in the movie, as long as they're bigger than these little flood knockoffs, and you can only damage them so much with weapons before you have to finish them off with fire, which you can totally light yourself up with if you aren't careful. Beyond that, it's a level-based game where you have some light puzzle solving to advance around the outpost and discover the story of what was going on at Outpost 31 and the Norwegian base. Real quick, the loading screen of this game is the same animation as the simulation on Blair's computer from the movie, which I think was a really neat detail. It makes sure to tell you that it's negative 40 degrees outside and you have a cold meter, which is called your exposure meter. With how cold it is, I don't think we want to expose anything right now. It's not like this when it's warm, I swear. But who cares about that? Gyro aim is on by default in this remaster. Whose decision was that? For all the nice changes they made to the game, this one seems incredibly random. I left it on just to mess with myself. While investigating the outside of the outpost, you can find the recording that McCready left from the movie, though it's not Kurt Russell because, I mean, they might have to pay him or something to use it, and fuck that. Also in this area is the small UFO that one of the crew in the movie was making, but Blake is not amused.
Yeah, we're not alone in the universe and all that crap. Check it out and move on.
You can also find the bodies of Knowles and Childs in this level, which is a fun nod to the movie, while also not distracting from the game. The first time I played it, I didn't even know there was a movie, I just thought it was a cool horror game. Anyway, we've seen enough. Blake and his commanding officer, Whitley, that he's reporting to over the radio, are now set to blow the whole base into orbit with C4 before we leave. This is also a good indication of how obtuse some of the objectives can be in this game. After planting the C4, it just tells you to return to the evac point. Where is the evac point? Well, fuck you, figure it out. And with Outpost 31 set to explode, Blake decides to head off by himself to the Norwegian base because the team there hasn't reported back, and also...
Besides, if there are any survivors, I'm the only one on the team that speaks Norwegian.
Yeah, of course he does.
Captain, it's Carter. Christ, where's everybody?
What happened here?
Something. I don't know what they were, but they attacked us.
This is the first crew member you can find. Since it's level-based, you have to find crew members at times to deal with certain things, mostly engineers so they can fix those pesky junction boxes. And annoyingly, every single time you get a new member, they are automatically set to just stand there like an idiot until you tell them to follow you. Alright, you're with us now. Here's a gun, let's get to work. Oh, thanks. Well, come on! At least they have incredible aim regardless of class.
He's double dead.
Yeah, he sure is, bud. We eventually find Pierce, the leader of the other team, and he's holed up in a corner with a flamethrower, not trusting anyone until they prove they're clean with a blood test. Honestly, yeah, I think he has the right idea.
Now I'm gonna show you what I already know.
Okay, I'm gonna admit they are cheating a little bit by making Blake basically the same character as MacReady. This is a line pretty much straight out of his mouth. And this is what happens when someone fails the test. It's a little different than anything that happened in the movie, but it makes sense for a game. That ends the second level, and sometimes this game becomes a bit difficult to follow. You walk out of the door, and then BAM! We're lost and separated. Why or how did that happen? Shut up, don't ask questions. Oh, okay, yeah, that one's on me. That wasn't cut. I have no idea who Williams is at this point. Alright, but that one actually was on me. Williams wants us to kill a few bigger things before he'll trust us, and these are the most fun enemies to interact with. You have to lower their health before finishing them off with fire, and they spawn a couple little ones when they die. It really reminds me of the enemies in Dead Space, which almost definitely took major inspiration from The Thing. For some reason, one of the few things your allies can't do is crouch, because trust only goes so far, and they aren't willing to go down for Blake just yet. You'll have to give them a few more guns first. Regardless, every time you have to crawl through the vents or something like that, which isn't often, they stand outside and wait for you to meet back up with them. In this level, I also learned that there are a few things more powerful than a medic equipped with a flamethrower. The Hippocratic Oath doesn't stop you from burning everything in sight. Similar to the movie style, this game doesn't really have jump scares, and this is as close as it gets. Spawning enemies in behind you is a tactic used in just about every game though, so it doesn't even register as an attempted scare for me. We've caught up with Pierce finally in the weather station, but somehow he can tell he's been infected, which is kind of the opposite of how that's supposed to work, and is the whole point of the monster, where no one knows who's infected. He was just looking for an excuse at that point.
Spider-Man does whatever a spider.
At this point, Blake is ready to just report back to Whitley and get the hell out of here, though we're starting to see information about a company called Gen Inc. doing some kind of experiments underground. While checking out the weather station, you then have to climb up onto the Raptors for some reason. That is not my fault. They should have had guardrails up there. Where's OSHA? Anyway, this is where we find our first boss fight of the game. They're very hard. Just kidding. The fights are actually very simple and work exactly the same as everything else, except you can see their health bar. Also, I guess we're going in without a teammate this time. Ah, it wasn't an alien, it was just a Norwegian all along. I knew there was something up with those guys. Search submersible? What? What the hell is going on? We were just in a weather station. Like I said before, the transition between levels in this game sometimes just doesn't make any sense. I wouldn't be shocked if that was the result of cut content, or because this was literally the developer's second ever game. In the sub, you can find this computer that shows, surprise surprise, Gen Inc. was experimenting on the aliens for who knows what reason, and it was led by a researcher named Sean Faraday. There's just something about alien creatures that will surely kill us all that movie researchers just can't resist.
There will be a lot of
aliens.
Oh yeah, that's true. Yeah, it's true. There will be a lot of
aliens.
Exactly. Count me in then. Good. 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 Yes, good.
Hey, looks like your last girlfriend.
Alright man, well maybe I take that gun away. How about that? We catch up with Faraday further in, who is actually modeled after the movie's director, John Carpenter. The resemblance is uncanny. He did the voices well, though he doesn't have many lines. We bring Faraday out to get some answers, and are greeted by Commander Whitley and an army of soldiers. The commanding officer is secretly trying to use the infection as a weapon and knew about it all along. Look, I said the story was decent. It's told well and offers new story beats continuing on from the movie without ruining anything the movie left behind, which is more than you can usually ask for, but it's not doing anything too original. Whitley's goons take Blake to a research base where we learn that Whitley himself has been infected, and he kills Faraday. Well, he ain't gonna be in the next property, also called The Thing. This is a pretty nice change of pace for the game though, as all of our weaponry has been taken, and we have to find some squad members throughout the facility to help us to escape and slowly build our arsenal back up. This also means at the start you have to run away instead of fighting like you normally would, and then ordering the squad around to do things for you when you have almost no means of fighting back yourself really makes them feel like Pokemon even more than they already did before. They all come with their own little names and everything, just don't get too attached to them.
Okay, Price, I choose you! Go! Fix the junction box!
We've made our escape with the help of those random guys in the lab, but now the soldiers Whitley had have orders to kill Blake on sight. There's something really funny about how much easier they are to deal with than the monsters are. If they could figure out how to give one of those things a gun, it would be over.
Time's up, Blake.
What the hell was that about? I didn't do anything to you. Then I died and retried, and now he's nice? Okay, Lavelle, you're on thin ice. We've got a whole army now. This boss is cooked. And they refuse to come in and fight with us. Yeah, okay, cool. Nope, no problem, guys. Whatever, I can handle it. Luckily, this fight comes with a turn the boss off button and is very easy. Oh god, there was a massacre. The whole team is dead. How the hell did that even happen? Now that we finally made it back out into the open, Blake noticed a bunch of shipping containers, so before we leave, we're going to blow them up to stop Whitley's plan, whatever that is. Okay, so to do that, we need to get into there. And we have grenades and the control to the door. I know what must be done. It's time for... cheese! Fuck. Okay, I guess I deserve that. With the C4 in tow, we go around and plant it on the cargo planes and hangars around the area, but the level didn't end, so I got confused. Shoot the C4? I'm like 90% certain that is not how C4 works, and those are pathetic explosions, but sure, whatever. Hey man, are you coming or what? Oh my god, he's stuck up there on those boxes. These guys are stupider than Pokemon. Speaking of which, this is the dumbest standoff I've ever seen. Let's resolve it right now with a little test then.
If you're sure you gotta do this.
Oh, well, call me the Peacekeeper. For some reason, this is the only thing in the game an ally has to do for you that you don't command yourself. He just runs back and forth until you get the timing of opening the door right. I don't know why they did it like that, but it ends up being really annoying and hard to time when you don't know when he'll take off again.
This mission is bullshit.
Yeah, you're the one making it bullshit. Just calm down. And he's now dead. Thanks for nothing, Stoles. Really? A poison trap? We've gone from sicking soldiers on us to Batman villain traps? Something about the infection is just turning Whitley into a supervillain, I guess. Then this boss fight in particular kind of comes out of nowhere, but it's pretty obvious that we're approaching the end of the game, so they must have felt the game needed one more before the end. Blake has rigged the base to explode, and now we're on our way out, chasing Whitley down to end this. Look at him go! He has an army of goons protecting him, and I just want to point out that I am literally on fire right now and still freezing to death. Yeah, makes perfect sense.
Game over, Whitley.
I don't think so.
So, was the arm flailing just for dramatic effect, you freak? They set up a ton of wires in here and,
Target spotted. Armed for combat.
I guess they forgot. Well, that's disgusting. Of course, we would have the final battle on top of the big UFO, though. And it's a turret section! The only one in the game. Good thing this random pilot was here to pick us up. I'm pretty sure it's not even possible to lose this sequence shooting down Whitley, and when it's over, the pilot introduces himself as MacReady from the movie, and the game ends. The Thing, the game, is surprisingly well made for all the things it had going against it. John Carpenter is actually really fond of video games, and not only has he played it himself, but he considers the game to be the one true successor to his film, if he had to pick one. There were some comics and other things that came after, but this is the one that he likes. There was also Game Boy versions of the game in development for some reason, but those were cancelled, and there was even a sequel in development, what would have been the one and only thing on this earth actually called The Thing 2, but it was cancelled when Computer Artworks shut its doors, and all we have of it are a few pieces of concept art. It was going to feature Blake and MacReady fighting to stop the spread of the infection in a mining town in Antarctica, which sounds like a neat idea, but unfortunately we'll never get to see it. As for why you may not have heard of this game before despite it having a remaster, there's a few reasons. The Thing actually sold very well for its time, selling over 1 million copies, and obviously it was remembered fondly enough by people like me who played it back then to get a relatively low budget remaster, but not everything successful is remembered. The developers going out of business very quickly after its release and being relatively unknown anyway doesn't help with that. A lot of people might remember a small game from Capcom's old catalog, but you have to remember Computer Artworks even existed to think about theirs. Besides that, let's not forget that this was a sequel to a franchise that did poorly at first, so a lot of people that didn't like it originally and never came around wouldn't have been interested, and this game came out 20 years after the movie anyway. There's not a whole lot of brand recognition for The Thing out there anymore, aside from the things it inspired, so it's somewhat easily forgettable. While I think it was a really cool game, it also has a lot of ideas that are kind of half-baked. You have to work with a squad, but the level structure constantly resets that. When people turn, even in the remaster, is somewhat scripted because it drives certain events in the story, and all said and done, the game is only around 5 hours long, so you can easily finish it in 1 or 2 sittings on a weekend and then forget about it. They originally wanted the game to be open world and make it possible to keep all NPC squad members alive through to the end, but it was ultimately impossible with the set pieces that they wanted to create, and balancing something that bloated with each surviving member proved to be too difficult. I would have liked to see what that could look like today, but it's something I highly doubt will ever be made, at least with the name The Thing on it. Though with how many things share that exact name, maybe that's for the better. The Thing is 100% still worth playing, and the remaster changed very little. Aside from the nice fix to the scripted turnings and the graphics updates, they also modernized the controls and made the game a little bit easier, which I think was warranted because it could often be a little bit unfair, and a bad situation at a checkpoint could force you to restart an entire level, which really isn't fun for anybody. Because of these changes and how easily available it is, the remaster is definitely the version to go for, and you can find it for pretty cheap, so it's not going to break the bank either. In today's environment, a new Thing game would probably not be made in favor of collabs with Among Us or something like that, but the way this particular game plays is a little unlike anything else I've ever seen before, so I'd be happy to see someone take a crack at this style even without the license. Except for that Funko game. They had a collab in that game, and that didn't need to exist. Ordering squad members around in things like Mass Effect just isn't the same as managing them in The Thing, and a longer game that explores these concepts a little deeper seems like it could be a smash hit. Hopefully someone comes along and does something with these ideas specifically, but at least we have the leftovers of what this game and franchise inspired going strong, so it'll never be completely forgotten. That's all I have to say about The Thing, and I hope someone out there enjoys it as much as I do. That being said, if you like this video and want to help support the channel, please consider liking or commenting, or even subscribing. I've been Abandoned Save, and I'll see you in the next one.